people who feel like they want to feel good about themselves too,
Mhm.
but they know that maybe they're not fast enough, say, in the running industry to win an award. So maybe if they cut corners, they get acknowledged as the winner, and then everyone acknowledges them and they feel good about themselves.
I see.
That's still not a reason to do it, but
Right.
that's the only reason I can think of why someone would, right?
Mhm.
And so, but there are other things that they can do and not necessarily have to come to a race and cheat the race.
Right.
But it's very important to us that we are honest and fair to everyone in the race, and that we're
Yeah.
monitoring things so that, like you say, the credibility and the integrity of the race is intact.
Welcome, everyone. I'm here with running legend Dave McGillivray, an entrepreneur, philanthropist, motivational speaker, author, and athlete. As an entrepreneur, Dave is the founder of DMSE Sports, which have produced more than 1,400 events since 1981. Dave is the founder of Dave McGillivray Finish Strong Foundation, which seeks to inspire and empower youth across New England and beyond through running, reading, and performing acts of kindness. Dave has authored 4 books, all sharing unique personal insights and experiences that have defined his life. As a motivational speaker, he has done 1,600 plus appearances from TED Talks to private corporate events to local schools. As an athlete, Dave is best known for his athletic feats, including his 80-day track across the United States, running 3,452 miles from Medford, Oregon to Medford, Mass. in the summer of 1978 to benefit the Jimmy Fund. Dave has run 167 full marathons, including 51 consecutive Boston marathons. Over the span of his life, he has run more than 160,000 miles. And by the way, he's also been the race director of iconic Boston Marathon since 1988. I hope you enjoy this episode. Thanks for listening. Welcome, Dave, to the pod. I'm really excited to have you here. You are a true legend, so really excited. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me on. It means a lot. I appreciate it very much.
Now, thank you. I know I'm going through your press release document. Obviously you are in part, have done so much, especially for running and running community. I think I want to start with Dave, a question. What runs Dave?
I think, it goes way back into my early childhood, when I was growing up here in Boston. Obviously, it's a very sports orientated community with the professional sports teams, Red Sox, Celtics, Patriots, Bruins. And, for me, I just looked up to those athletes and said, one day I want to be one of them. I want to be a professional athlete. But for me, unfortunately, I was and still am short in stature. So always the last one cut when I went out for the teams, or the last one picked when my friends would pick sides. And, it became really very difficult time in my life where I just learned the concept of rejection. I felt like I was being rejected. I felt like I had the talent that everyone else around me had, but unfortunately for me, I wasn't as big or tall as them. So I started to run because, no one can cut you from running, I guess. You just go run. And
Mhm.
ever since, I've run about 160,000 miles. And when I first began to run, I ran for just to stay fit for the other sports. And then I became very competitive in running. And now it's changed a little bit, even though I still have that competitive fire in my belly. I'm almost 70 years old now, so it can only take me so far. Um,
Yeah.
so now, really, what it's all about is just setting goals for myself and not limits, and just like I do with everyone else who participates in the races I direct. It's all about raising the level of self-confidence and self-esteem of
Mhm.
people. And that's what I try to do for myself. I'm just trying to feel good about me. So it puts me in a really good position to help other people.
No, that's amazing. No, thank you for sharing, and that's truly inspiring. Um, you are the race director for Boston Marathon since 1988. I'm sure you have
Hmm.
seen a lot over this 37 years, and I think and counting. Um, I'll just start with that. How is the feeling of running this iconic or leading this iconic race for so long, and you still continue to
Yeah,
do
well, I've
so?
had various titles initially, technical
Yeah.
coordinator, then technical director, then race director, now race course director, and who knows what it'll morph in
Okay.
down the road. But for me, there was a little bit of an incident at the start of the 1987 Boston Marathon where there was a wheelchair accident and a tripping incident at the start. And the BAA decided after that year's race that maybe we need to get another set of eyes on this and take a stronger look at it operationally and logistically. So I applied for the job, and lucky for me, I got the position as technical coordinator and went in and helped fix up the start a little bit. And I've had the job ever since. But
Wow.
what was interesting back in those days, my first year on the job, there was only 9,000 people in the race, and
Wow.
now
Okay.
there's 30,000 people. And for
Yeah.
the 100th running in 1996, there was close to 40,000 people. So we went
Mhm.
from 9,000 in 1995 to almost 40,000 in 1996. So that in and of itself changed things for the event in terms of, by virtue of the significant increase in field size, we had to change our mindset as to how we operationally and logistically do things. And
Mhm.
then that's when the whole advent of chip technology entered into our race.
Yeah. Talking about operation aspect of it, and I think I listened to a couple of your various talks that you have given, and I think your involvement is primarily from the operations aspect of the Boston Marathon. There is other aspects of promotion, which is the marketing side. Probably, I don't know if you get to involve that much, but operationally from 9,000 to almost 40,000 and 30,000 plus constantly, how it scaled. I think this is a massive scale difference, 3x, 4x almost.
Yeah, it's about visualization. It's
Mhm.
about um, visualizing something before it actually happens.
Huh,
And that's,
okay.
I think, one of my skill sets. You can bring me into a venue and I can look at the venue and then you can say to me, somehow we need to get 30,000 people in here,
Uh-huh.
figure it out. And, I have a way, especially surrounding myself with good, experienced people, of
Mhm.
trying to figure that all out. And with the Boston Marathon in 96, what was interesting is we were planning for 25 because it was the 100th anniversary. So we increased the field size, but then it just grew beyond that with about 4 months to go. So we had to change everything in the last minute practically to accommodate 40,000 versus 25,000.
Mhm.
And what was interesting is for me, prior to that, I always had this sense that there's got to be a better way to time and score this thing because
Okay.
we can't just have runners just crossing the finish line, getting into chutes and pulling, barcodes or writing down bib numbers because it's just there's not enough space and there's not enough time to do that.
Yeah.
So I was looking for some sort of chip technology, although I didn't think that it actually existed at the time.
Mm.
And interestingly, I went to the New York City Marathon the year before the 96 Boston Marathon. And there was a company there called Championship out of the Netherlands.
Mhm.
And they were just displaying their product. I went, oh my goodness, this is exactly what I've been looking for the
Mhm.
last 4 or 5 years. And I said, are you timing tomorrow's New York City Marathon with this? They said, no, we're just exhibiting here. I said, well, when the race is over tomorrow, can you pack that stuff up, put it in your van, and drive to Boston? So, and I want to show what you have to our team because this is exactly what we're looking for.
Mhm.
Well, they did. And they showed us exactly how it worked. And I said, we need to morph into this new age of chip timing. And
I see.
so the 100th came and we thought we were going to get the 25,000, but the organization was a little bit nervous about introducing something brand new like
Mm.
chip technology when there were all eyes around the world on us to get
Right.
this thing right.
Yeah.
And so they didn't want to use the chip technology for the 1996 Boston. But then when it grew to 40,000, I said, well, folks, we can't manually handle this. We can't do this. There's
Yeah.
just not enough space and time. I said, let's go with the chip and see what happens and keep our fingers crossed. So we did, and
Mm.
it worked. It worked. And then so we were one of the well, we were the first major road race in the United States to use the championship system at that time. And then from that point on, everything changed in our mindset and the whole concept of how many athletes, how many runners we can accept in our race, because now we can time them all and not have to worry about how much space there is and all that. So it just changed the industry for the long haul.
Oh, wow. That's a fascinating story. Thank you for sharing. I didn't realize that a championship was the first one. Boston was the first one to adopt championship technology there. Great. Um, since you are on this topic of the race management and then the technology integration side, I know which is the focus of our conversation today would be um, from say 1996, we were almost, a couple of decades from 1996. Have you seen that the technology has evolved to help you organize or coordinate better operationally? Especially
Without
the,
a doubt. I mean,
yeah,
what
yeah.
what the chip basically does in its very simplistic form, at least in the world I live in. I'm not a technology expert, but
Mhm.
it collects data, right? It
Right.
collects data and it's accurate. So then once you have the data, then it's a matter of what do we do with the data? So
Hmm.
all kinds of things opened up in terms of how many we can time and score, getting results to people instantaneously, putting systems out along the course so loved ones can track
Right.
their runner along in real time along the
Hmm.
course. It has ways of helping medically in terms of, trying to find out where somebody might be at any point in the race.
Hmm.
It supports security because we want to know who's in our race, who's running down the road. So we basically have that information now. Again, instantaneously and at multiple locations along the course. It helps with um, just the credibility of the performance. In other words, there are some people who try to beat the system, and I
Yeah,
guess you
yeah.
could say cheat. And so if they're missing at one or two or three systems along the course
Hmm.
consecutively, then that raises a red flag, and then we can look into it and all of a sudden find out that maybe they didn't run the race entirely and then maybe remove them from the results. So it keeps the integrity and the credibility
Hmm.
of the race intact. So yeah, I mean, it has had so many different ramifications other than just timing and scoring.
Oh, wow. No, that's good to know. Because I was talking to actually Frankie Reyes of Miami Marathon, and I think one of the topics that was very close to his heart was the integrity of the races. How do we keep the integrity intact with the use of technology? And that was top of his mind that he's exploring now on different aspects of integrity, like some of the areas that you alluded upon as well. So I'm glad that you're also thinking in that direction and how we can leverage that. Another aspect of a race of this size or magnitude is the safety and the security, and how do you leverage the technology for the participant, for the spectators, and whoever involved, the staff. It can be emergency response technologies or the communication tools, the tracking tools that you mentioned. Um, How you think about technology to help you in this operationally, a smoother race, make sure that, it's a great experience for all the parties involved.
Well, I can give you a for instance, again,
Yeah,
my world is operations and logistics,
right.
not as much technology, but I surround myself with brilliant people in the technology world
Yeah,
who can provide to us what it is I might be needing to
right.
help me manage an event.
Yeah.
For example, um, a lot of times it's about density, right?
Hmm.
There's two things that are involved in what I do. Like I said, I've said it already, time and space. When you put on a race, you only have so much space to line people up, so much space to run down the course, so much space at the finish line. And then when you shut down roads, the communities within which you run your race, they're like, okay, you can shut it down for a period of time, but not all day. We got to get back to normal traffic flow and whatnot. So
Yeah.
we're dealing with those two things working against us all the time.
Hmm.
And so we have to be very vigilant in terms of how we conduct the event to minimize the impact on the communities within which we conduct the event.
Hmm.
So a lot of times when we line people up at the start, it's a matter of, well, down course does the course narrow to the point where it's almost like a pinch point. Whereas if you send people out in a specific density and then they get a mile down the road and then it gets really narrow and they can't fit through, well, that's
Right.
not good for the race.
Right.
So what I've been doing is I can adjust my starting width
Hmm.
based on data that the technology people are giving me as to how many runners, for example, are crossing the starting line
Hmm.
every minute. And if I think that the most I want crossing the starting line is like 700 runners a minute versus 1,000, then we'll fire the gun, we'll see what goes through, and all of a sudden, if it's way too many, I'll narrow the starting line while the race is going on, so that
Oh,
it's like a
okay.
reverse funnel, whereas
Hmm.
there's less people going across the line than we can accommodate. As they run down the street, they can run into a wider area and not necessarily back up.
Hmm.
So these are some of the things that we do internally that nobody else on the planet knows
Right.
is
Right.
happening, but I could never do that without the technology. The other thing that I try to be careful about, though, is, the basics. So the basics I'm putting on a road race is, you know, getting everyone to the starting line, lining everyone up, the gunfires running down the course, water stations, hydration stations, medical stations, taking care of people along the way. They
Yeah.
cross the finish line. You take care of them once they cross. You have medical, whatever. You give them their medal, and they're on the way. That's the basics. Everything else that we do is an enhancement.
Hmm.
It's a nice to have, not need to have necessarily. However, it's become a competitive world. So we're all competing for the same runners to run in our race if there's multiple races on a weekend. So we have to do things that the participant looks at as being something beneficial to them or an enhancement to them to choose our race over someone else's race. So
Hmm.
there's other reasons why we might engage in more or a higher level of technology than just timing and scoring, or like I said, tracking can be one that they want their kids to be able to follow them along the course or whatever it might be. So
Right.
technology has played that role, but you have to be careful because when you introduce that and you say this is what you're going to do, you have to deliver. And
Yes.
if
Yes.
somehow some way the technology doesn't work, even though you didn't have to give that to somebody.
Hmm.
You did it as a benefit, but it didn't work. Now you're the villain. You didn't provide what you said you were going to provide. So you have to be absolutely sure that you've got the right people, the right equipment. You haven't overextended yourself and said we'll give you a lot more than what you're able to deliver because you
Hmm.
don't want it to backfire on you.
No, that's a very good point. Do you have some examples where you have seen that it falls short? Because you have seen probably quite a few advancement over the years, 30 plus years, where it was promised but fall short, or otherwise, someone maybe over delivered what they promised.
Well, obviously it's better to over deliver, but
That's true.
again,
Yeah. Yeah.
the thing is that if whatever it is you're going to over deliver with, you want to use that to sort of encourage people to register for your race. So you're not over delivering it. You've committed to it before the gun fires.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
again, that one instance is the tracking is a perfect example, because a
I
lot of
see.
times races commit to, like, log on here, and you'll be able to put your runner number in, you'll be able to track them along the course, and it's not working. And
Right.
then people get really frustrated because they thought they would be able to, figure out, or know when their runner is coming, because they may be out on the course and they have an app and they
Hmm.
log on to the app,
Hmm.
and they're trying to find out when their runner is going to hit the 20-mile mark of a marathon where they're standing,
Hmm.
because they don't want to miss them. And all of a sudden, the system goes down, the runner goes by, they
Right.
missed the runner, and they've been out there for 2 hours in the pouring rain, and they didn't get to see their runner because the
Right.
technology didn't work. Those
Right.
kinds of things happen. I wouldn't say all the time, but it's not like it's perfect every single time, a race tries to do all this technology stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Another area I thought I'll be curious to get your perspective, Dave, would be on the sustainability and the environment. Because I know you mentioned about water boats. It's kind of very critical, and that might be a technology involved. But have you seen it evolve? How to make it efficient, more effective for the runners, like time span versus how it can you know reduce kind of the flow of the traffic, or more effective way over the years, or you're thinking that there are some areas it can do better in future?
Yeah. Well, I mean, technology is just, again, the website and all the information you can put up
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
Technology can also benefit um, the communities where you're holding the race, because it gets information out to all of them as
Hmm.
to, the road closures. And the whole idea is you want to eliminate, um, the whole element of surprise to people.
Right.
You don't want them to get upset that they didn't know. Technology supports that effort. Technology supports the whole concept of, um, just public safety, and
Right.
how law enforcement, um, can sort of watch the race in
Right.
terms of, whatever we may put in place, that or they put in place. I mean,
Hmm.
obviously, what happened after the Boston Marathon in 2013, that
Right.
changed everything too.
Hmm.
And technology played a huge part in the overall public safety effort of the next year's marathon to keep it even safer than ever before.
Right.
So it isn't just the runners that benefit from this, it's spectators, it's public safety, it's medical, it's everybody involved. I just get a little concerned that some some races, they're so enthralled with the technology and the fun things you can do with it,
Yeah.
that they're taking their eye off the ball in terms of, like, yeah, make sure you have enough cups at the water stations. Make sure you have
That's true.
people at the right intersections to make sure runners are going in the right direction. That's the worst thing, is they go off course. And so
Right.
for me, it's boots on the ground. The number one thing is make sure you create a well-managed event, and that make sure that people can run the course and get across the finish line safely. And then everything else is a bonus on top of that.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point. Um, not not too long ago, 2020, we had the COVID situation. How did that change the dynamics? Is how you orchestrate the race, Dave? Is there any change
Well,
post-COVID
what's
world?
interesting is, um, about 2020 is I had myself, because I put on a lot of races,
I
like
do,
30
yes.
of them a year. And I had the best year set up for 2020. I had 35 contracts signed. I was putting on races all over the place. Everything was great. And then COVID came in March, and every single one of them got canceled. And so my clients didn't need me anymore because their races, they canceled their races.
Yeah.
However, a lot of them decided that they wanted to go virtual
Hmm.
and do something, salvage something out of it.
Right.
But when they decided to go virtual, they didn't need me anymore because they could do that internally, just sit at their own computer and
Right.
figure it out how to make this virtual world of running work for them in terms of
Hmm.
setting up a website and collecting data from the runners and downloading Strava and GPS and Garmin's and all that stuff. And I thought, well, okay, the runners are still out there running
Hmm.
and the clients are still having an event, even though it's virtual, and I'm sitting at home twiddling my thumbs. There's nothing for Dave and company to do
Yeah.
because of the boots on the ground aspect of what I do
Hmm.
got taken away.
Right.
But slowly but surely, as you know, it all came back again, and it's come back in a big way. I mean,
Right.
most of my events now are selling out in 2 or 3 or 4 days. I
Wow.
think there's you know, I don't know, the whole running industry is almost, there's been certain surges in the industry back in the early 70s, it jumped, and then philanthropy into the space and it jumped, and then women really started getting into it and it jumped, and then COVID hit, boom. But now, when COVID hit, people couldn't go to the gym, people couldn't exercise the way they used to exercise. What did they do? They went outside and
Mhm.
walked and ran. Now we're getting the benefit of all of that. So even though COVID knocked us on our knees, the
Yeah.
result of that, I think, actually helped us in the long run, where more and more people are seemingly participating in our races.
No, that's great. I have to ask you that. I know you are the owner and president of DMSE Sports. You actually organize some of the iconic races, like Falmouth Road Race, or I think you are in Beach to Beacon when you spoke to you last week or so. There's some iconic races you organize, and you're also part of Boston Marathon. I'll be curious your take on, like, do you see a trend in the challenges that you face, that the races that your company runs, and also being part of the Boston, the similarity of challenges that you face today? Maybe technology can help, like, because a lot of my audience are technologists probably listening to you. Um, that, hey, you should think about something maybe can solve for us.
Yeah. Well, there's a point of diminishing returns. In other words, the the most frustrating part of what I do
Hmm.
is when we promote our events, we elevate the the experience, we
Hmm.
market them all over, and then they sell out in like a week, and then you're turning away all these people who want to
Ah,
participate.
yeah,
And that's hard to accept, both from the perspective of disappointing them, but
right.
also, with all due respect, from a business perspective, you're leaving a lot of money on the table.
That is
So
true.
I don't know how technology, when it's all said and done, can help in that regard. But I wish we could accommodate everybody who wants to participate. And like I said, there's not enough room to be able to do that. You have to reopen the roads. So unless you start doing multiple days of events, or you have more time and you can spread it out over a longer period of time, thus accept more people to participate. So I got to figure that one out somehow, because it's really frustrating to disappoint people who
Right.
really want to get into one of your events.
Did virtual running option helps in that regard, or you're thinking, because you are a
Good
running
point.
legend yourself?
When
Yeah.
Yeah, I think virtual worked when that's all there was. But then
That's
when races came back in person,
yeah.
now the virtual concept has pretty much died out. I mean, I think a lot of races still have that component to it,
Yeah.
only to give people who don't get in an opportunity to participate virtually and get a medal and get a t-shirt, but they're running around their neighborhood. Because
Right.
we don't get thousands and thousands of people to register, virtually when a race has an in-person event, right? So,
Hmm.
um, but they're not if you already have the technology in place for a virtual, it isn't a lot of heavy lifting just to, you know, re-engage it. All you have to do administratively is mail stuff out.
Uh-huh.
Once they register and they send their results, you just mail them a shirt and a medal,
Right.
and deal's done. But I really haven't seen, like, if we had a 10,000 person race, you might have 200 people running virtually. You're not
Huh.
going to have 5,000 people running virtually. I haven't seen it anyways.
Oh, I see. I see. Oh, that's a good point. So I think your take is probably good. I have seen that because I talked to Bob from Ransina, Bob Bickle, and I see his quarterly report that he publishes among, I think, the races that have gone through that platform. The numbers are staggering. Post-COVID, as you said, it's an upward incline in double digits, which is a great sign for from a business point of view, and also that it's actually more and more people are getting interested because into the running and the sports of running, which is a great sign too. But yeah, virtual numbers are not in the similar proportional. It's like in the other way,
Right.
as you mentioned there. Great. Any other challenges that you see from Boston point of view or from the DMSE Sports point of view, Dave, that you would like to
Well,
share?
one big one, it's always been this way, but it seems to be getting, I don't want to use the word worse, but more challenging, is
Hmm.
the weather. With global warming and everything, we're all meeting and talking about this because, with these 80, 85-degree days, wet bulb globe temperatures in the 80s, um, we're going to have to deal with this. And, just starting earlier in the morning isn't always the solution.
Mm.
Um, we had the Beach to Beacon, TD Beach to Beacon last weekend, and you know, we were gathered in the command center because the forecast for the next morning, the day of the race, was thunderstorms and lightning.
Oh
And
boy.
we were all like, well, what do? We got to communicate with 10,000 people, volunteers, all the runners. If we're going to make a change, we only have
Hmm.
a few hours to do this. And we
Right.
did make a change, delayed it for an hour, which turned out to be the right, absolute right decision, because we dodged the bullet. Well, not even a bullet. We dodged a lightning bolt, and we were able to
Yeah.
get the race happen without anyone getting hurt or any risk or jeopardy. But you're constantly chasing the weather forecast, and that's not going to go away, and it's going to get more and more challenging. And again, that's where technology comes in too, with the
Hmm.
meteorologist. And it's hard too, because you could call one TV station and their meteorologist, and then you can call another one and their meteorologist, and they're looking at different models and they're giving you different information, and you're sitting there going, well, what do I do?
Right.
Do I cancel this? If I don't fire the gun, no one gets hurt. But
Mm.
am I ultimately responsible for these 10,000 people and their safety if Mother Nature decides to do a 180 on us and wreaks havoc? I mean,
Hmm.
that's hard. That's a hard thing to sort of cope with as a event director or as an event management group, making
Right.
those hard decisions. Because you're making a decision about something that's going to happen in the future, maybe in the next 2 hours, five
Right.
hours, 10 hours, 24 hours. That may not happen. So
Right.
if you make the wrong call, someone could get hurt. Or if you make the wrong call, runners are going to be upset with you because you canceled an event when the weather turned and got better. And they get up that morning and say, hey, there's nothing wrong with the weather. Well,
Yeah.
that's not what we were dealing with yesterday.
Right.
So to me, that's our biggest challenge right now.
Oh, wow. And this is also a challenge for you in Boston too, because every year Boston has, you don't know where it will go. It can go hot, it can be cold, it can be rainy. I ran Boston in 2018. It was rainy and cold and windy. And there are other years it's you don't know which to go. I'd be curious, how do you even plan for those kind of things, Dave? Can you even
Well,
plan?
you do what we call hypothetical
Oh,
tabletop sessions.
I
So
see.
in other words,
I
you
see.
do the what ifs. What if this? What if that? You just talked about Boston, right? Boston is a point to point. So the start is 26 miles away from the finish. You can have very different weather. And when people say, well, tomorrow's temperatures are going to be in the 80s, well, where? and when.
Yeah.
Our first person crosses the starting line right around 9 a.m. The last
Hmm.
person crosses the starting line 2.5 hours later. Very different weather 2.5 hours later than, what it was before then, right? So
Mm.
you have time, and you have location, and
Yeah.
you have to figure out, well, what's safe?
Right.
In
Right.
the 1976 Boston Marathon, it was like 90 something degrees at the start, but the runners were
Wow.
running into cooler temperatures as they're heading into Boston towards the ocean. And when they got to Boston, it was in the high 70s, not the 90s. In
Right.
2012, the opposite happened. Well, not the opposite, but it was 89 degrees at the start, 89 degrees along the course, and 89 degrees at the finish. That's a very different experience.
Mm. Right.
So you have to pay attention to all of that and make critical decisions. Yeah.
Cool. So you have the tabletop exercises, and then you probably operationalize as you get closer to the race. Maybe, as
Yeah, I
you
mean,
said, the night before or something on the
yeah,
morning.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
so the whole idea is to talk through things at a high level.
Yeah.
You have to talk about chain of command, who's in charge, who's
Mm.
going to make what call. I mean, there are times when you can assemble a group,
Yeah.
on a conference call or on a Zoom or in a room. And there are other times when something's happening right then and now. And that person on the ground's got to make the decision. So
Right.
who is that person? And are
I
they
see.
knowledgeable? And do they understand the ramifications of the decision that they make? Are they
Mm.
making things worse?
Mm.
Sometimes I've seen where they've predicted bad weather, the race cancels the race that morning.
Uh-huh.
Runners are already there. They showed up. They're not going to get in their car and go home. Guess what they're going to do? They're still going to run. Now you canceled the race, but they're still running. There's no
Yeah.
security out there. There's no medical out there. They're on their own. And even
Uh-huh.
though you've said to them, you're on your own, can you really leave them out there on their own? That
Right.
kind of thing. So
I
these are
see.
the types of things so it isn't just, it's easy to make a decision. Sometimes what makes sense as far as a decision may not make sense when you look at the big picture and how what the effect of that decision is going to be. Maybe that's worse
Hmm.
than what the decision was trying to avoid. Yeah,
I see. Oh, wow. That's definitely fascinating. Yeah, it has so many tentacles attached to it. It's not like a single threaded decision that you can make.
that's right.
And
Yeah,
especially if you're empowering some people to make the decisions, you need to understand that they are, equipped to make those decisions, understanding the repercussions of their decisions down the road. I want
it's
to
funny
go.
you even
Yeah, I'm
bringing this
sorry.
up because I'm going to a meeting in about 20 minutes, and I'm meeting with fire, police, and other town officials here in Falmouth, and we're having a weather meeting to talk about the weather that's
I see.
coming up for our race that's coming up. We're just going to talk about scenarios. What if,
Oh,
what
wow.
if, look, the forecast is this, but what if it changes? What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Who's going to make the call? We're going
Mhm.
through that in about 20 minutes. So it's pretty apropos. We're even talking about it because my head is like, that's where I'm at right now.
No, that's what you said, that that's one of the top challenges on your mind that you want
Yeah.
in today's world. I want to go back
Yes.
to another area that you touched upon, which is the integrity of races, Dave. And not only Boston, but since you DMSE Sports organizes so many races, how big of a challenge that is for you?
How do you mean?
By integrity means, people, maybe folks cutting corners into the races, or things that should not be doing, maybe doing, like integrity of the race or integrity of the sport, or
Oh,
how.
okay.
Yeah.
The integrity of our races and stuff.
Yeah.
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 Well, I really don't think many runners come to an event to beat the system. I
Right. Right.
even though we have to set it up so that if they did, we can we can catch them. And
Right.
so mainly not to punish them, but to give the rightful um, acknowledgement to the
Right.
people who did perform.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
So, and that's why chip technology a lot of times helps us in that
Sure.
regard.
Sure.
Um, I just think in the world, there are people who feel like they want to feel good about themselves too,
Mhm.
but they know that maybe they're not fast enough, say in the running industry, to win an award. So maybe if they cut corners, they get acknowledged as the winner, and then everyone acknowledges them and they feel good about themselves.
I see.
That's still not a reason to do it, but
Right.
that's the only reason I can think of why someone would, right?
Hmm.
And so, but there are other things that they can do and not necessarily have to come to a race and cheat the race.
Right.
Um, but it's very important to us that we are honest and fair to everyone in the race, and that we're
Yeah.
monitoring things so that, um, like you say, the credibility and the integrity of the race is intact.
Right. Right. Okay. But it is not as the top as probably the weather challenge or how to accommodate
Yeah,
the
we don't
other.
spend as
Yeah.
much time on
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
because I
Okay.
don't think it's prolific. I don't think there's a lot of it going on.
Okay.
That doesn't
Okay.
mean you ignore it, but you spend more time on things. Number one, more than anything, is safety, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
whatever you need to do to keep the participants, the volunteers, and anyone involved in the race safe, that's
Mhm.
number one priority. And then after that is integrity.
Absolutely. Okay. That's good to know. Well, thank you so much, Dave, for your time today. I know you have to head for another meeting. I really
Yeah,
appreciate your time and thank you so much for sharing your experience and knowledge about especially usage of technology within
of
the.
course. All right. It's been great. Good to see you. Thanks.